Phoenix Down Radio is on the air.
Welcome everybody to Phoenix Down Radio, episode number 196. I'm your host, Klauss and Seyrr, and joining me today is Seyrr Timono. Seyrr, how's it going, buddy?
Yo, I am pretty exhausted, but I got some nice tea and bagels out of it, so that's good.
Bagels.
Yeah, no, there's like this one, it's a bialy or something like that. It's got like onions and poppy seeds in it. It's not cut all the way through. It's got like a little big pocket of them. Oh, and I also got some like lox cream cheese when I got those as well. So yeah, really looking forward to breakfast the next couple days.
I love bagels and lox. Always tasty. Yeah, we've been going through, getting the house cleaned up. We're expecting company next weekend, so that'll be a lot of fun.
It's always nice to get a little bit of spring cleaning in there too, even if it's still well into winter.
Though the weather has felt like spring, which is really weird. Though it's starting to take a little bit of a colder turn here. We had 50-degree weather this week.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, we were in the like mid 70s today, but over the last week there was actually really huge rain and windstorms around here. Some significant power outages.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
I wouldn't say no to more of it, but I'm trying not to say that too loudly because my coworkers got annoyed at me.
Well, I mean, the thing of it is, I mean, even though it's been, unseasonably warm for us, the problem is we haven't been getting a lot of the precipitation we need. So we're kind of a little bit in a drought. Usually at this time we're sitting at about 30 inches of snow.
Dang.
Overall total for from when the season would normally start to now, I think we've gotten maybe 6.
That does feel low from what I know of you guys.
Yeah, I mean last year I think we got about 80 inches of total snow, and like I said, we've gotten about between 5 and 8. It's really weird. I thought I saw something about below 0 coming up in the next couple of weeks, Nick Nar. So we'll see what happens. I mean, regardless, it is Minnesota. It is winter, so you can't expect 50 degrees, all year. We could wish for it, but
if you want that, you gotta get out here to California.
Yeah, but then we have to deal with not hurricane. Well, some hurricanes, but mostly earthquakes.
The hurricanes are minimal, mostly drought and
earthquakes. At
least where I am, tech bros.
Oh God, that's the worst.
The hurricanes might be preferable.
Yeah, or the earthquakes to swallow them up.
Like earthquakes happen, but we are actually in surprise. Like earthquakes are definitely something that. Like actual Californians are just like, yeah, sure, that's fine. It's definitely something that people are more afraid of it if they're not from here.
No, I mean the fact of it is, I mean, in my lifetime there have been at least a handful of easily felt and measurable earthquakes out in that area. Am I not?
Oh, sure, but our our buildings are remarkably well engineered for them, so it's like, yeah, the earth is shaking, but it's not actually a big deal.
Yeah, well, we have basements.
Yeah, we don't get cold enough to for basements to be worthwhile, which is kind of because I've seen so many things of like, oh hey, you like renovate the basement into this like really cool rec room type thing, and that's not a thing here.
Yeah, like what I've got down here. This is
exactly.
My man cave is in my basement, and I freaking love it.
Yeah, that's not a thing here.
It's a bummer.
Right?
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to make sure to mention a programming note here for everybody listening on the podcast or live here at twitch.tv/Phoenix Down Radio. There will not be a podcast on February 24th. I'm going to be volunteering my time again at the One Bright Star Gala event. But we will be back again on March 9th at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 p.m. Pacific Time, because Sarah's going to be back at working Saturdays. We decided to keep it going for this one as well, since we only have the one podcast, and he wanted to get some time in with friends. So I can't blame him for that.
Worth it.
So tonight and the next 2 podcasts after that will be at the later time frame. We should be jumping back into a little bit of earlier stuff. Actually, no, there's only going to be one podcast in. Am I correct on that, or which one is it? one of these, I'm not sure if it was Detour or if it was I think Detour is
Well, we'll have the yeah.
No, Detour is not a podcast weekend, but I know coming up on May 4th. Yeah, we were scheduled to have a podcast on May 4th. That is a concert night. We're going to be going to see a Distant World or a New World Final Fantasy.
And we'll have all of the details about that upcoming show schedule on our website and at all the usual places.
Exactly. So make sure to keep tabs on that and just follow us there. Or you always get the notifications when we go live anyway. So we appreciate all of that. Just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. And so you're not trying to tune in on the 24th and be like, where the hell are these guys? They're so slow. But it is what it is. We need to, it's a really good organization, and I have a really good time with it. Plus, get to dress up all fancy, see the girlfriend all dressed up fancy. It'll be a lot of fun.
It is really nice to be able to give back to the community in those ways. I know we have our extra life throughout the year. We have the various personal things we do. I do encourage our listeners to also find those types of volunteer opportunities in their own community. It means a lot to people who really need it, and it's a lot helps out a lot for you as well. Like, I know when I was in grad school, I did some volunteering with the local animal shelter, and that was something that helped give a lot of structure to my day.
Cool.
Plus, in my case, I got to play with and take care of bunnies. That was awesome.
Ooh, bunnies. That'd be cool.
Yeah, they were adorable.
Yeah, we've been taking care of and playing with the dog, for a little while. So we took him for a couple walks today. He had a lot of fun.
Aww.
He's upstairs hanging out with my girlfriend, so they're having a good time up there. So, all right, let's go ahead and keep going. As always, thank you to our Patreon producers, Nick Nar, Aurori, Ravenheart, and Mika. Your support is always appreciated, and if you want to help support us, you can also always go out to patreon.com/Phoenix Down Radio and take a look at the different tiers that we have available out there. So let's go ahead and jump into some gaming community news. We have a lot of it to talk about today, so let's go right into it. Final Fantasy VI director believes a proper remake of the game would take about 20 years. This article comes from Ryan Dinsdale from IGN. Let me copy and paste this here. Come on. Copy and paste. Boom, so you guys can follow along if you'd like. Final Fantasy VI directors Yoshinori Kitase has said a remake akin to that of Final Fantasy VII's could take around 20 years to complete. A Genki translated interview with Julian Chiese, in which Kitase, who's now a vice president, member of the board, and executive producer at Square Enix, said he's aware of how popular a remake of Final Fantasy VI would be, but couldn't say for sure if it would ever happen. He noted that because of the depth of Final Fantasy VI, with so much content and so many characters, it would take twice the length of Final Fantasy VII Remake to develop and release. That's kind of interesting to hear.
You're talking 14 playable characters plus some guest characters. You just know that they need to have Leo playable at some point during that. A fairly extensive scenario. The entire world of Balance, a storyline, could make multiple games in and of itself if we're giving it the full FF7 remake treatment. The development expansion of, for instance, the town of Narsh, South Figaro, all those different locations, each of them getting expanded, getting development, like doing something to that same level. I could actually believe it just for the sheer scope of what you would need to do. The alternative would be that you'd have to start making cuts, and you'd have to start making some really major adjustments. Not to mention battle system stuff, given what each of the characters' unique abilities, adding stuff in that would let you get some type of feel of Sabin's blitzes, Saiyan's Bushido techs, all the stuff like that. It's one of those things that at first it's like, but it's like an older game, it can't be that much, and then you start looking at the sheer scope of what it would involve.
Absolutely. What was kind of interesting is apparently this interview had some other things to talk about because from Games Radar, written by Hiren Cryer, this article says the the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth lead is cool to do a 2D HD remake of Final Fantasy VI, kind of like Octopath Traveler. In that one, he says, but so they ask, but what if the remake wasn't done in the HD manner? Eurogamer asked Katase in a new interview whether he'd be interested in a smaller scale remake of 6, possibly even in the 2D HD style, similar to Octopath Traveler or Live Alive. He says, I don't have any particular plans, but I think certainly if there is a developer within the company who wants to use that style or even another style they feel is really the best approach for the game that they're remaking, that the style the fans would want, and that's the style the fans want to see it in, I definitely think that's a possibility, and they could very much work with it. I'd be very happy to see that. Well, that's kind of neat to hear.
And that one does make a lot more sense. Especially, I think a lot of the people who remember Final Fantasy VI fondly, they remember those sprites, remember the outcry that we got when we had those other versions where they were changing out the old style sprites for those iOS, Android monstrosities.
Well, I mean, it's the version that I played when I did stream the game here a while back.
Yeah.
Because it was the one that was on
something
Steam.
Something in the Octopath Traveler could still continue to leverage it in the visual style that the people were used to, were very fond of, and it would definitely bring down those development costs. If you're not needing to create full 3D environments and models for all of these, God, where would they even start for the character models? I guess maybe you start with some of the Dissidia ones?
Yeah, I mean, because if you think about it, the reason I think Final Fantasy VII got the remake treatment that it did is because it was the first game in the series that included all those FMVs with fully fleshed out characters that were, done in a truly 3D style, not just the ones with all the short, stocky polygon ones.
Yep, not to mention you had other assets like from Advent Children, other things like that. There was at least some of the work done for them for making those Final Fantasy VI ones. God, the amount of original work you'd have to do just in terms of bringing some of those sprites into a fully modeled form.
Yeah, so I could see where they're saying, because I mean, they would have to fully flesh out all the movement, all of the facial features, and all of the emotions. It would be just an absolute ton of work, and I can see where.
Don't forget the huge variety of enemies that you'd need to be fighting as well.
Yeah, well,
think about all the different enemies that showed up in Final Fantasy VI.
I'm trying to think.
Even if you're only doing a selection of those.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in 7 as well, but the thing is, a lot of that, like I said, those battle scenes, that was in the larger 3D style. So, I mean, it was easier to probably flesh those out a bit versus just, pixels and sprites. So, if given the choice, which would you rather see, Seyrr? The 2D HD, or would you rather see a fully fleshed out remake a la Final Fantasy VII?
I would rather the 2D or HD, the Octopath Traveler style one, we'll call it. I do remember seeing some concept models of, these were very early on. Back when FF7 was first released, there were some concept pictures of what a similar type of treatment of 6 would look like. And it just felt so strange to me. We'll get into this a bit more when we talk about our discussion topic later, but capturing some of that initial feel and what enchanted me about the game, the other feel like that, I really just don't feel like it would lend into it without becoming a completely different game in the process.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I am trying to hold back because, as I said, some of this will be talked about in our discussion topic, and I have so many thoughts about this.
Yeah, you're going to notice that today is going to be our discussions are very remake heavy because of all this news about because Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming out very soon. The demo is live, which we'll talk about more in a second, and then just all of this other stuff. It really got us thinking about what our thoughts would be when it comes to wanting some sort of remake for some of our favorite games.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is big. This is by Jesse Lennox from DigitalTrends.com. We already knew that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth would be a big game, and it would needs 2 discs to fill it all. That's crazy, isn't it? But we now know how much space that's actually going to take. According to a data mine, the full game will be 145.2 1.25 gigabytes. You might need to delete some games. Stuff. Yep.
Yeah.
I had to clear some games out to install the demo.
Same. And gonna need to do a bit more in that case.
So think about this, guys. For everybody who has a PS5, the onboard disk storage is only about 600 and some gigs total after what's taken up by the system. So with that, that's going to take up a full quarter of your storage space.
It really does seem like it's moving more towards a only having the game on when you're playing it type thing, which starts running into other concerns about copyright and archival and the like. But
yeah, I mean, if that game ever does, if they decide to remove it from the store and you can't download it anymore and you've deleted it, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a discussion for another time, I think. But God, that is just huge. I wonder if people will be looking at getting larger drives for their PS5s. Can you even do? Can you get an expand?
Yes, okay. There is a secondary slot in there that you can install an M.2 SSD. I have a 2 terabyte one in mine, so I mean I have plenty of storage space. And honestly, those drives are coming down in price. Even the ones that you need the high speed ones to be able to put in there, you can get those for under $150 for 2 terabytes. It used to be like $300 when they first came out, but it's gotten a lot better. And I see that our chatbot is having an absolute conniption fit right now with API errors all over the place. So ignore those, please, guys.
Welcome to API Error, home of the API Error.
Now playing API Error.
That'll be fun to fix later.
Again, like we were talking about a little bit just a few seconds ago, the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth demo is currently live. There was a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth State of Play that was held on Tuesday this week, and during that is when they announced the demo was live. And what's cool is it features a playable Sephiroth. This article comes from GameSpot.com and was written by Jess Cogswell. Let me go ahead and copy paste that for y'all. The highly anticipated Final Fantasy VII Rebirth demo is now available to play via the PlayStation Store. Developer Square Enix announced the demo during the Rebirth-focused State of Play, as well as elaborated on what fans can expect from it. According to the studio, the demo will follow Cloud and Sephiroth on the former soldiers' final mission together. Both Cloud and Sephiroth will be playable characters throughout the demo, with familiar faces including Tifa making brief appearances in the infamous flashback sequence. And one thing that wasn't mentioned in this article that I found in another one, there will be a second part of the demo released on February 21st, ahead of the game's release on February 29th. That portion will feature the Junon region, so there'll probably be a few more playable characters available in there. At least if you watched the new trailer that came out of it, lots of characters available there, so it's gonna be quite interesting. So Seyrr, what were your thoughts on the demo?
Oh, so I went in completely blind. I just knew that it was going to be the Nibelheim reactor. I, of course, had played the original, so lots of comparison of the different parts to it. Definitely some of the things where there had been hints about later plot twists, noticing those little breadcrumbs that are dropped. I was surprised at how much more of a sympathetic and relatable character Sephiroth was made this time around. I credit a lot of that just to the voice acting, being able to God, it was so controversial in the Final Fantasy series when they started having voice acting as part of it back when Final Fantasy X was first released. But being able to convey these little differences, Tifa's reactions as Cloud's telling the story.
You went in my room?
I do appreciate that both Tifa and Aerith called out Cloud in very harsh terms.
Oh my god, I laughed so hard when I was playing that.
Yeah.
You went through my stuff? No, just kidding. I can't believe you would joke about that. Yeah, Cloud.
I said, yeah, I did that, and both Tifa and Aerith called Cloud an asshole.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I went to it and I decided not to look in there, and that's what they said. That's not funny to joke about. So, and it's true,
Yeah.
it's not. So,
Yeah, but no, if you say that, yeah, you went through Tifa's underwear drawer, they full on call you an asshole.
and probably
Which,
a
I mean, he
pervert.
kind of deserves. But felt the controls felt good. Playing as Sephiroth definitely had a bit of that kind of like feeling of power to things. I remember in the original FF7 during those flashback sequences, there were a couple points where you could play as Sephiroth, and he was one hit killing things.
Mhm.
It wasn't to that degree. Cloud did feel a little more on Sephiroth's level. Like there wasn't quite such an impossible gap between them.
No,
At the same time, it did feel powerful, fun to control, and just like it wasn't really enjoyable to play.
in that part of the demo, they were both level 40.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, in the original game during that sequence, Sephiroth was extremely high level and Cloud was like level 5 or something like that.
Yep, you are correct on that. He also had a unique portrait for that portion of the game where he looked even younger and more fresh-faced.
I have to say that, you know, looking at the character models during that the demo portion, you know, because knowing what we know about what actually happened in that sequence, you could really, if you looked closely at one of the soldiers, you could tell.
Yep.
What was actually going on there?
There was a little more hint dropping about it, or maybe it was just a little bit clearer. So yeah, given I was actually talking about this whole thing with a couple of my friends today while we were outside, since they've been playing the demo as well. One of them remarked that he wasn't sure if it was just because of how young he'd been when he played the original, but it felt a lot easier to follow the story. Like he'd had to look it up before, read through all sorts of guides to get an explanation of what happened. And here it felt a lot easier to follow the story, to even understand oh, hey, there's some hinting at, foreshadowing at that maybe things are different. He also shared an interesting story from a Reddit thread where people were discussing the demo and the game, and one of the people on the thread was someone who commented that they never played the original Final Fantasy VII, but had played Crisis Core. And was very confused because, like, okay, you're seeing this flashback, but it's supposed to be this other person here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
To which the responses were, okay, cool, you understand Tifa's experience. So yeah, definitely just in terms of what again was supposed to be a bit of a head breaky, things are going strange are going on, that wasn't always well conveyed because of whether it was limitations in the graphical engine, issues with the translation, other things like that. A lot of those more complex and subtle aspects of the story are coming through much more clearly now. And given how fundamental the events of Nibelheim 5 years past are to the story, really striking the notes right on that makes a big difference.
What were your thoughts of the trek up Mount Nibel?
Oh, that also felt like...
It felt like you were actually climbing a mountain.
Not just that, but when you had to go through the different Shinra facilities, when you have the path being diverted, all things that I remember did occur in the original, but again, it felt like it didn't just feel like, okay, here's this random thing that's happening. Some of the bosses that we fought, okay, there's it. Even if it's just a brief mention, there's an explanation for why this thing is here and attacking us. There's that sequence where you go and see the natural materia formations.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. Which, again, highlighting the whole thing of the conflict between the Shinra Corporation and, this whole thing of the planet and how nature wants to go. And so seeing this natural formation, being able to smack it around with your sword a bit. I did search around the formation a bit because I remember back in the... Oh, no, it was in the present day one, not in the flashback. But in the original game, I think there was a summon materia in there somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
I didn't see any materia around there this time, but there were a lot of materia to pick up.
Yeah, and a lot of those materia, really nice for, especially if it's something where you may have people who aren't necessarily transferring data or who are not necessarily as maxed out things. So you have stuff like materia that will give temporary boosts to other ones.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who didn't go through and level up everything, all that, I have no idea what kind of bonuses may transfer or other things like that, but it's a little something to. I remember the dot hack games and how they were kind of simulating an MMO experience where the first game had you like going level 1 to 30, and then the later games would be like, say, level 31 to whatever. But it still felt like you were kind of starting again on the RPG power curve progression. And it feels like they're doing some stuff to shortcut it and make it feel more like, no, this is the midway point. It's a really nice way to shortcut that entire issue.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, when I played through the game, I think I maxed out to level 50.
Yeah.
And I have not seen anything that mentions what the max level is going to be for Rebirth.
Or how they're planning to handle in terms of, is there going to be data transfer? How will it, what will go over? I don't think we've had any news on that front, have we?
No, I'm not sure either, but we'll find out once the game ships.
Yep. We do know that if you have completed the Nibelheim flashback in the demo, then you will not need to repeat it in the actual game. Which also, again, makes sense given that, so far as I know, none of the actual items you find or the levels you gain or the like carry forward either.
No,
it's supposed to be a flashback.
It's a story, and it happens pretty early on in the game. Once you get to Calm, I think it is.
Yep. Like, you leave Midgard, first place you go is Calm, and everyone's like, okay, we kind of want an explanation for what's going on with the Soul Sephiroth thing.
Yep. All right, let's go ahead and continue on. This next bit of news was actually quite interesting that I found. The Final Fantasy VII Rebirth demo is hiding Easter eggs of 2 legendary super bosses. This comes from a website called as.com. Is written by Mike Reyes. Shared by Reddit user Dude Bismarck, a pair of posters in the game have been found that quite clearly make reference to Ruby and Emerald weapons, 2 of the secret super bosses of the original Final Fantasy VII that challenged players to some of the toughest, most difficult battles in the entire game. The first poster is a reference to the Ruby weapon, showing a road among red croppings that form the distinctive shape of the giant boss. The text on it reads, "Marvel at the ruby red sunset. Coral's unique red rocks." In the original game, the super boss could be randomly found roaming the desert around the Gold Saucer and Coral, which are both locations highly featured in almost every trailer for the new title so far. The second poster reads, "Deep dive into the Emerald Sea with an island in the shape of Emerald weapon." The poster even has colorful shapes in the place where the gems are located on the boss, with a big red eye where the face of the monster would be.
They're a little small and blurry given that it's like a poster on a thing, but it looks like they're supposed to be like tropical flowers or something. But yeah, placed exactly to look like the various eyes of the emerald. This is impressive.
Yeah, and I did go through and watched the trailer, and saw the posters were there. So it was like, just, yeah. One of the things that people are wondering is if maybe we'll see a hint of other posters for the other 3 weapons.
They know that players are going to go through freeze frame through everything, examine every single model. So they're purposely hiding the stuff, knowing that we're going to find it. I do love how you have this kind of relationship that develops between the creators and the players, in part because they know what lengths we're going to go to, and so they like to put in those little treasures for us.
Yep.
Yeah, that is a remarkably well hidden Ruby weapon in there. The shapes on the rocks, if you didn't know what you're looking for, it's just like, okay, maybe slightly weird rock outcroppings, but with the slightest understanding, yep, those are the claws, that's the face.
Yep.
God.
And if you're wondering where these posters are located within the demo, they're in Tifa's room.
So I'm not saying that I got distracted with piano and underwear rifling, but I'm not saying that.
Speaking of piano, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth fans are getting creative with the in-game piano in the demo. This article is coming from Eurogamer.net and was written by Ed Nightingale. Let me go ahead and copy and paste this for y'all as well. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth players are already sharing piano covers from the game's demo just days after its release. The demo takes place in Nibelheim, where as Cloud, players can snoop around in Tifa's house and play her piano. Fans of the original remember this is how you unlock her ultimate limit break. Now in Rebirth, the piano is freely playable in a little mini game, kind of like Rock Band or Guitar Hero. So players have been busy creating covers of Final Fantasy tunes and pop songs.
I spent a little bit of time futzing with the piano. You'd have the option to play specified songs, in which case it'll do your usual rhythm game, sending stuff along, but you also can freely play, and it lets you adjust quite a lot about it. Move up and down octaves. You have the option to do single notes and chords.
Switch back and forth between the black and the white keys. It
is a remarkably full-featured piano in a tiny little stick thing.
I wasn't a big fan of it when I first tried it, to be honest with you, because it was just a touch clunky. But once you understand how the interface works, you got a little circle, and it's divided into 8 pieces because there's eight notes per octave. And then it's got a number one. So one side is your single notes, the other side is your chords, and you can hit triggers to change between octaves and between the white and the black keys. And
then you just tilt the sticks directionally to play the appropriate note.
Yep, as either if you're free playing it whenever you want, or if you're playing one of the songs that you can find, because in the game you have Tifa's theme that you can play. And when you're playing a specified song at that point, a little yellow part circle is going to come out from the center, and when it gets to the edge, that's when you want to hit the note. And then you start playing it, and everything sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. I definitely was missing some notes there, but I was creating something that sounded fairly nice as compared to just like out the single note melody lines that I plinked out in the original.
Yeah, it was actually impressive.
When you're done, that was the thing. When you finish with that, in the flashback, back in Calm, the rest of your party members are deeply impressed with Cloud's hidden musical talents.
Yeah, actually, it was kind of neat. I mean, I didn't.
Oh, the boys got hidden depths.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe went through the song twice. The first time I was just trying to figure out how it worked. The second time, I think I got an A rank on it, so not perfect, but not bad.
Do you get any rewards for it?
No.
I didn't get any especially good ones before I decided to move on.
No, but if you go through the link that we posted in there, they link to a number of Twitter posts that are different songs, and somebody played the intro to Black Parade. Somebody played some songs from Kingdom Hearts. There were a couple of Zelda jams in there. So
has someone done Megalovania yet?
Yes, actually. They started.
Yes! Thank you, Internet! You come through again!
We're not going to play them on here, but the link is up there, and if you want to check it out, by all means, go check out Eurogamer, or just you can Google Final Fantasy VII Rebirth demo piano, and you can find.
You
just
give
a ton
people
of
a fully fledged musical whatever, they're gonna do stuff with it.
Well, okay.
I love people.
Let's put it this way: we've had the ability to do perform actions in 14 for how long now?
And they warned us to please not do copyrighted stuff, and people immediately started doing copyrighted stuff.
So
so reliable.
So Square.
No, I'm not complaining. I'm not upset. I am delighted at people being people.
No,
being
I agree.
Very people.
300%. I am very happy that that we're getting some real creative things happening within that system, and it's really nice to see.
Much better coordinated than I am, I can tell you.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, but the fact that because within 14 you either have to be multi-boxing to play full songs, but the fact that you can play a full piano piece with chords and everything, it's chef's kiss. Seriously.
Yeah, having the one stick handle, okay, and here's going to be the chords for that, was a really nice way to do that. It makes me happy.
It will take some getting used to, and it is just, I believe it's just going to be some side quests that you can use to probably unlock, prizes, and maybe that's how you get Tifa's ultimate limit break as well. But we'll see. But it was a lot of fun.
I hope not. I was not that good at the game.
Well, I mean,
and I don't want to practice for 40 hours.
Well, I'm sure it's not.
But I don't want to.
I don't think it's going to require you hitting every single note in perfect succession. Like you have to play, at the fastest speed with all the notes in there. So,
I mean, probably not.
All right, and then another last bit of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth news. According to people watching or talking with Square Enix and watching everything, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth concludes at the end of the original game's Disc 1. This article comes from Phil Hornshaw and was written at GameSpot.com, so go ahead and check them out as well. But according to the article, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth looks to be a huge game, as we found in our preview, but now we know exactly how much of the original Final Fantasy VII the new game will cover, and it's still just equivalent of the 1997 game's first disc. In its recent State of Play presentation showing off Rebirth gameplay, Square Enix noted that Rebirth goes from when Cloud and his friends leave Midgar through their arrival at the Forgotten Capital. That's a major event in the game's story and originally marked the end of the release's first of 3 CDs when it was released on the original PlayStation. That suggests that while Rebirth covers a lot of ground, apparently offering players the ability to traverse a huge portion of the original game's world from Junon and Costa del Sol to Cosmo Canyon and the Gold Saucer, it's leaving the last 2 discs worth of story for the final game in the Remake trilogy. Granted, the original Disc 3 was mostly included mop-up content like side quests, but there's still a bit of content that Rebirth might not get to. And given the way Rebirth was discussed during the State of Play, however, we might see some significant remixing of the story, bringing some elements from later into Rebirth and letting you access them before some of the later story developments. And there's also the fact that, as we saw in Final Fantasy VII Remake, the story isn't necessarily bound by what we saw in the original release.
Yeah, I do want to call note to, like, in some of the trailers, some of the other stuff we saw. For instance, we saw some segments that looked like they were occurring in the Whirlwind Maze. That was definitely a Disc 2 thing in the original one. And I can speculate as to all sorts of things. Maybe they're changing the way that the Sephiroth got his hands on the black materia, given that the original one was kind of an anticlimactic immediately after it's gotten it stolen. It does seem like they're playing around a little bit more what happens with the black materia and the white materia. Lots of ways they could be tweaking around, but that it does culminate in that the events at the Forgotten Capital, which again, it's like 20 odd years at this point. This was in the original where Aerith perished at Sephiroth's hands.
Spoilers, come on.
Yeah. And where the moratorium is long. I know you're joking, but but given that a lot of speculation has been that with the changed timeline that Aerith might survive it, if we are going to be exploring that this is a changed story, this is a changed timeline, having that huge pivotal thing as the concluding note for this leg of it might be an interesting way to do it. This is, of course, purely speculative, but given what ideas and speculations have flown around, having the Forgotten Capital be the culmination of that could be a really interesting way to really highlight this. Okay, this is a changed world and a changed story.
Yeah, in the trailer, we not only saw, a bunch of those, what did they call them? The specters, the Whispers. The Whispers flying towards the Forgotten Capital. And then there's this whole scene with this guy that nobody's ever seen before, talking about what they need to do to try and stop all of this from happening. I think he must be like one of the head whispers kind of thing. That's my guess. I mean, he looks really weird.
I mean, we've had other characters introduced. Like, God, what was his name? He was the one who was riding the motorcycle and challenged us.
Oh yeah,
In
in the first one.
yeah,
Also in the
it's like,
demo, did you notice that Tifa's master is in the inn?
he was in the
Was he?
original as well.
Oh, I guess
Yeah.
maybe I never just I probably was at a point where I wasn't digging that deeply into it, but
Yeah.
they really
No, in the original game, he mentioned that he has students all over the world. That in that town, he has a very promising one named Tifa. He is specifically the one who rescued Tifa after the Nibelheim incident and made it so she didn't get picked up by Shinra's goons.
I guess I must have missed that in the original. I mean, it was how many years ago that we played that? 20.
Yeah, stuff just sticks in my brain. I don't expect you to remember this. It just sticks in my brain.
Yeah, that's okay. but there are a ton of new characters within the remake world, so
yeah. And as I was saying earlier, even for those who are familiar with the game, the original didn't always land on all of its things, or like some stuff wasn't always as memorable or clearly communicated, and it's a lot more clear what's going on this time around.
Speaking of things happening a long time ago, or from games that happened a long time ago, Final Fantasy VIII director would change the combat system if it ever got a remake. This article is from IGN and was written by Matt Purslow. Let me copy paste this.
Oh man, they're just asking everyone about remakes, aren't they?
I mean, this was a big interview between IGN and Katase, and so a lot of this stuff
It's the obvious question. I'm just amused at how many different games had remakes discussed at this point.
But what's crazy to me is this month marks the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy VIII.
Oh God, I didn't need to know that.
Arguably, the awkward middle
hell?
child in the PS1 era, its tale of teenage mercenaries and trippy sorcery would likely benefit from a remake more than the ever popular Final Fantasy VII has. And while there's absolutely no plans for Square to do so, the RPG's original director has thoughts on what would need to be changed in a hypothetical remake. Talking with IGN, Final Fantasy VIII's director Yoshinori Kitase, who was in charge of all the ones, I think, he did 6, 7, and 8, I believe, correct?
I think so. Let me check that really fast.
Said he'd really rework the battle system on Final Fantasy VIII, noting that players struggled with the stat-heavy junction system that powered the RPG's characters and fights. I think.
Yeah, he was the director for 6, 7, 8, and 10, as well as Chrono Trigger.
Okay, but it was another team that did the third in the PS trilogy with 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe it was at that point that the team had split into two, and so one was working on 8 while the other was finishing 7, and then the 7 team worked on 9. Like they started doing the concurrent thing at that point, I believe.
Well, I think they needed to with just how in depth everything was getting. I mean, 10 was like a huge change from the way everything had been done.
And I mean, moving from the Super Nintendo Sprite era to the 3D models, the development needs changed enough that having multiple teams working concurrently on games, if you wanted any kind of respectable development cycle. Yeah, no, it makes sense. I just think that's the point where it started happening, and so you wouldn't necessarily have the same names handling throughout.
Yep. Anyway, continuing on. I think you may remember we had the junction system in Final Fantasy VIII, he said, and the thing about that system was the enemies leveled up in line with what the player's level was. And obviously you had to then use the junction system and how you customize that to overcome the challenge there. I think it was a very difficult system for some people to get into. Depending on player skills, sometimes they just didn't work out the best way of doing it. So I think I'd want to return to that and really rework the battle system on 8 and make it something where the level of difficulty and approachability for some fans was a lot better balanced. So I think that's the thing I'd look at most if I was going to look at remaking it.
Yeah, I think removing junctioning entirely would be difficult given how important that ends up being to a lot of the plot elements as well. But maybe making it was absolutely a thing where if you were leveling without keeping up with your junctions, the game would become impossible. If you were junctioning like crazy while also minimizing your leveling, the game became trivial. So yeah, definitely some balance issues in both directions there.
Yeah, if you look at any of the speed runs of 8, they only get to like level 12 or something like that by the time they hit, when they're going start end game stuff.
Yeah, turn enemies into cards, turn cards into spells, become as gods.
Yeah. And they would use those cards and they would get spells they wouldn't be able to access unless they were, normally killing things and going into certain areas and farming for it.
Yeah, which I think was at least supposed to be a little bit of an incentive to try out and play Triple Triad. Just, again, something that ended up becoming much more easily exploited than they may have intended.
Speaking of that, I didn't find any good articles talking about it, but in the trailer and at that state of play, there is a new card game coming to Rebirth.
Ooh.
Queen's something or other. I don't remember. It's a really odd
Queen's
shape.
Blood, it looks like.
Yes, Queen's Blood. So there's this whole new game that we'll be able to start playing and try to compare to Triple Triad.
It's got a very strange grid layout. Each of the cards appears to have a 5x5 grid with various things lit up on it. There's like something of how you can place them. This is looking strange.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's interesting that they're that they added a card game into it. Because let's see, in Remake there was the Fort Condor game,
right,
which was kind of fun, and now in Rebirth we're getting this Queen's Blood, which is everyone's gonna try and compare it to Triple Triad.
Yeah, this one is
or Tetramaster.
Man, there is already a fair amount of analysis. It seems to be something with a struggle for territory, where power is amassed between cards in each of the rows, and the goal is to try to overpower your opponent in each of those rows. Interesting. I'll look at this more later.
Yeah, like I said, there wasn't a lot of information on it when I did my research on
doesn't
news,
stop people from speculating.
No, exactly. I mean, and I am interested in seeing what it's like. I'll probably give it a try. I don't know if I'm going to go too deep into it, depending on what you can really get out of it. It's going to depend on what I put into it, to be honest with you.
Does it give me the dopamine? If it gives me the dopamine, I plays it.
No, does it give me an ultimate weapon or limit break? Then I'll play it.
That is one of the things represented by the dopamine.
No,
those are stand-ins for the dopamine.
Anyway, let's go ahead and continue on with...
I have stayed up until 4 a.m. chasing highs in puzzle games. If it gives us the dopamine, we plays it.
Seyrr,
don't follow my example, people.
You need to find a new hobby, man.
The problem is the new hobby becomes another puzzle, and then it becomes another chasing the dragon.
All right. The Final Fantasy XIV Xbox beta starts February 21st and requires Game Pass on top of the sub. This article is from IGN.com and it was written by Ryan Dinsdale. Tucked into a blog post revealing the Xbox version's open beta beginning on February 21st at 12 midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. UK, Square Enix revealed that, unlike PlayStation, Xbox players will have to pay for 2 subscriptions to play Final Fantasy XIV. Quote, the free trial version, including the open beta test, will not require an Xbox Game Pass Core or Ultimate plan to play, Square Enix said. However, the full Xbox Series X and S version will require Xbox Game Pass Core or Ultimate plan to play. Now, if I remember correctly, there was a little bit of pushback when 11 came to the 360 because it was required then. No, it wasn't required for 11. There was something.
I had to just bring that up as an example where there was a issue with if you needed multiple subscriptions to access things on that.
I think
this is not the first time we've run into this issue.
There were other games. I want to say when Fortnite went multi-platform and on the Xbox players initially were required to have Game Pass, whereas PlayStation players did not require it. And I think there was a huge amount of pushback on that, and they ended up, not requiring it for those types of games. So I wonder if something similar is going to happen with 14. Granted, Square Enix doesn't see a dime of any of that the Xbox Game Pass money. So, and
that goes to maintaining Microsoft servers for all that kind of thing.
And the thing of it is, all of these servers are hosted by Square Enix. So why does Xbox need a cut of that?
I think it's for hosting the base online architecture for Xbox stuff that then allows them to connect to Square Enix things. Like the verification that this is a valid Xbox account, that it is this person's, and so on. Like, I don't know that the cut is necessarily fair, but at least some of that is just for maintaining Microsoft's architecture on this.
I have a feeling that there's going to be enough pushback where they're going to probably end up reversing that decision, but we'll see.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, I play on PC anyway. I'm not planning on changing that anytime soon, so I'll just play my normal subscription. I have my own little fee that I have to pay, and that's called computer upgrades, which are a lot more expensive than a couple of years of Xbox Game Pass.
We do get some other neat things out of them, mind you.
No, exactly. Yeah, you can make spreadsheets.
Wait, what? I'm sorry, I went into a fugue state.
Spreadsheets.
That's how you know you're having fun.
So Nick Nar is going to give it a try on Xbox. I mean, I do have a Series S that I could try it on, but you know, I also have the PS5 version of it as well, and I don't play it there either. So I don't know. I just hope that it ends up becoming fair, and because it really could cause a lot of people to not want to try Final Fantasy XIV if they're required to have Game Pass and they don't already have it. While I think a lot of people who own Xboxes do have it, not everybody does. Same with PlayStation and PlayStation Plus. Not all PlayStation owners have a PlayStation Plus subscription.
Yeah. I did for a while. I don't at this point.
I still do, because there's enough free games to make it worthwhile. Like Foam Stars just came out. Speaking of Square Enix, which I want to give that a try. And it's like a Splatoon-like game, I think, that's more raver looking, and because you're playing with foam and very disco.
Foam party.
Yep. So yeah, we'll have to see what comes of that, what kind of blowback there is from the players who are trying it on Xbox and what they say. So we'll see what happens. Last bit of news. Final Fantasy XIV Valentine's Day celebration runs until February 21st. A lot of stuff going until February 21st or happening on to the 21st. So in this one, we always have to help Astrid again. So we're helping her spread love in Eorzea, and we get to earn a heart chair and a love heart emoji. Have you done the story yet?
To be clear, that chair is a furnishing and not one of the many romance-related chairs that mounts that we've had in previous.
It's just a housing furnishing.
It's a cute one, though.
It's a neat-looking chair. I'll get a couple of them, I'm sure, because I get everything.
Someone did point out that the love heart emoji perfectly captures where the dote heart, if you blow a kiss at someone, where that one goes. So it's like the little heart goes into the one you're making.
So if somebody does a dote emoji to somebody who's doing a love heart, the heart goes right there, huh?
Yeah, it's like perfect target shooting.
Interesting. I haven't done it yet. I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah.
Before the 21st.
I've had enough other stuff going on.
All right, so that is a good chunk of news. Wow, that took quite a while.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, it was quite interesting discussion, I thought.
Yeah, quite a lot going on, especially with the upcoming release.
Yep. Speaking of our discussion, and all the news about remakes, I mean, it made sense for us to go ahead and talk about what our thoughts are on the different remakes we've been receiving for different Final Fantasy games, whether it's, you know, some of the remakes, the remasters, re-releases, you know, all that fun stuff. Seyrr, why don't you go ahead and lead this part of the discussion?
Sure. So, pretty much like it started with, as you said, you've got all these terms: remaster, remake, re-release, reboot, reimagining. Lots of different ones that get thrown around by the creators of these, by people reviewing them. And this is something where these terms don't really even have a consistent usage or meaning. I even tried to search, like, okay, what is the difference of a remaster and remake? 4 different articles with 4 slightly different interpretations of it. So it's not something where there's a single agreed upon thing. Generally, though, remaster has been used as kind of like the smallest level of like changes of updates. It comes from film and music where like say when making a song you have studio recordings, all these different audio tracks that get layered together, that get mixed and get turned into a master, kind of the master thing of it, that all the copies will be made from
Yep.
for to sell as singles these days, to stream online, all of that.
Yep. And one thing
And
you've
so
seen a
when-
lot on those is you get these remasters of different songs. What they end up doing is they take those different tracks that they have back in the vault and they just reorder them. They increase this one a little bit more here. They bring this one down a little bit there. Maybe they change how some of them interact together. A little bit more stereo.
Maybe they have better technology that lets them bring through a little bit better of the audio quality, stuff that was harder to transmit before.
Yep, maybe they clean it up a little bit, get rid of some of the background noise to make it sound a little bit more pure. I mean, because everything is, a lot of the stuff that I listen to, even if it's from like the 80s and 90s, there are remasters of those songs, you know, done in the last 5-10 years because they wanted to just improve it better. And on that vein, a remaster of a video game basically takes the story of the song is the same in a remastered song. In a remastered video game, the story is the same in most of those cases. Where the
story is the same, the gameplay is going to be pretty similar, the content's the same. One of the examples I saw discussed was I think Halo Combat Evolved, where it was essentially the same game but just with better graphical quality on the assets, other things like that.
I'm going to use the different Final Fantasy HD remasters that we've gotten for Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy VIII, where they've taken those graphics, they've upscaled them. In some cases, they've even maybe redone them a little bit to make them look nicer, given the current technology. And then, but the story, it's a 1-for-1 retelling. Right. In that case.
And Final Fantasy X is an interesting example to bring up because in the one we got, we actually did get some slight differences to the content, though some of that was they were using the international version for it, which had a different option for the sphere grid. Or you see Final Fantasy XII where there was the option to select the different zodiac sign boards rather than the single one. That one, for the North American audience, it was a change. But it was just they were just remastering using the international version as their thing. So not necessarily as much of a change as we thought, but it can start blurring the line between a remaster and these other types.
Yep. If you're not used to that particular version, but it was released on that same console, just in a different region, they decided that was the best version that they could use to remaster. Final Fantasy VIII, I think, is more a better example of a 1-to-1 what we're used to.
Right.
Then they added these. Sometimes they'll add in a few quality of life changes, but they're not changing the story or how most of it plays. A remake, however, is where they take it and they can do whatever they want. They can make it a remaster.
Again, that's not necessarily. This is one where remake, especially, is for a long time. It was we're remaking it. We're making the same thing. So again, it's going to be similar stuff, but instead of just like you use the song example, instead of taking the existing tracks, remixing, doing the cleanup, you have them re-record the tracks. You remake the tracks, and then you build your thing based off of that.
But in that, the soul of the song can change when you're re-recording everything, when you're redoing the entirety of it. At that point, it's not the same song, it's not the same game.
Like changes creep in, but again, even then, it's often even if there are differences because you're recording, the goal at least was to make the same thing, even if you're getting these differences slipping in. At least that was how the term was used for a while.
Okay.
At this point, it's really started to muddy the waters. Final Fantasy VII Remake, obviously, where it is a much larger scale, but this has been going on for a while. When looking for discussions on this topic, I even the Wikipedia discussion of the differences between these things pointed out that the 2004 remake of Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes added voice acting as well as new gameplay. So even though this was something that was ostensibly a remake, even that was adding a lot to it.
But with Final Fantasy VII Remake, I mean, they've kept the core of the game the same. You've still got Cloud, Barrett, Tifa, Aerith, Red, Sid, Yuffie, blah blah blah, Vincent. But the story beats have changed. The assets have changed. We have voice acting.
And again, Final Fantasy VII Remake is playing with this because they are using that remake term, but then specifically invoking the, hey, we are explicitly changing the story. So we already had the term becoming a little more fluid and murky, and now they are outright flouting it, possibly in part just like because doing it on purpose to play with and set up expectations that they can then subvert. But this also means that those terms become a little less useful to determine what you're getting.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost better to call it a retelling.
Maybe?
I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
We like reboot, reimagining. There are so many.
Maybe this would be considered more of a reboot.
There are so many re-terms, and there's not a clear definition. One thing I want to note is that these terms are generally going to come up when the new game or the new work, it's being done by the same company or the company that now owns the rights. These aren't usually suitable for fan works because we're going to be talking a little bit about fan works and fan interpretations of them.
Yep.
Also, that is usually, I want to point out the example of Harvest Moon, the original farming sim RPG for the Super Nintendo, owned by the company Natsume. The series continued for quite a while until there ended up being a split where one company continued to own the name, a lot of the other rights associated with it, and the other company got the development team. And so you had people who were creating stuff that was still in the spirit of it, that was capturing a lot of the feel of it, but using a and so you have the Story of Seasons franchise. And the question about okay, the Harvest Moon is the one that has the official name, but arguably the Story of Seasons franchise is the one that maybe should hold claims. And this is one that, again, there's not a clear answer to, which makes it that much murkier for which one do we call the claimant to the title? Which one is the if you want to talk about Stardew Valley as the spiritual successor that also has captured a lot of this feel being done by a different group, and this can get us into kind of those fan works. I did want to bring up a specific case study since we were talking about the Final Fantasy VI remake,
and it's your favorite of the Final Fantasy games.
I don't know. I have trouble saying favorite, but it is one I know intimately.
Okay,
I played through the Super Nintendo release at more than 10 times. There was a period during my teenage years where I was like playing and replaying it constantly.
Freak.
Not to mention the other ones.
Freak. Just kidding.
Yeah, 100%. So Final Fantasy VI, just looking at your North American releases, nothing else, you've got at least 9 different versions. Your original Super Nintendo release, the PlayStation 1 re-release in Final Fantasy Collection. You've got the Game Boy Advance release, the Wii Virtual Console one that is no longer available. You've got the PlayStation Network one, which was the PlayStation Network thing of the PlayStation version. You've got the iOS Android one with those infamous sprites. That one has also been discontinued at this point. You've got the Steam release.
Which
You've
is
got
still
the one
there. It's technically the iOS release, but just available on the PC.
Right, but mostly yes, but not 100%.
Okay.
You've got the SNES Classic Edition, the one that appears on that SNES Classic device. You've got the Pixel Remaster. And then you've got like those full versions, but then you have a lot of various reimaginings of plot arcs, character arcs that appear in other games that are kind of sampling from it. Final Fantasy Record Keeper having sequences where you play through some of those plot beats with what if these other characters were there? You can make observations on things.
Yeah.
And so you've got all these different versions. And it's really hard to call any one version the definitive version.
The original SNES release.
I mean, like, you got some serious bugs that were fixed from that one, and then other ones that were introduced. Like that original SNES one, that's one that your sketch command, you are risking your save file every time you use it. Or how the evasion stat was broken, where I think it was evasion did nothing and magic evasion did work for both, or it might have been the other way around, but where pumping one of those evasion stats, you could dodge every single attack. You've got localization changes. Some of this includes changing plot elements and arcs, different characterizations of Kefka, whether those various Woolseyisms, the stuff from the original Ted Woolsey localization, are left, some of those elements left in because at this point they become part of the fan lore. Are changing the names of spells to fit the general Final Fantasy brand Bible, turning Fire 3 into Faraga. Graphical changes, some of them due to the platform. The Game Boy Advance one had to make some changes to have characters move around various scenes because the Game Boy Advance screen was so much smaller. One of the ones I found really fascinating, the censorship changes. A lot of people can tell you that this original Super Nintendo one had a lot of censorship. Nintendo censored a lot of stuff for American releases. The holy spell being called Pearl, other things being removed. What isn't necessarily as obvious is that some of the newer versions have had new censorship added in. The South Figaro sequence, where Locke infiltrates South Figaro and rescues Celeste. There's a sequence where Celeste is found chained up in a sub-basement underneath South Figaro, being watched over by Imperial soldiers. In the original, those Imperial soldiers are getting the chance to get a few hits in on this traitorous general. Under modern standards, that is now violence is rated, can be something that gives you a much harsher rating under the Japanese system for age ratings for games.
Interesting.
And violence against a restrained character is a very quick way to get a much higher rating. So in every release since that one, the bit where those soldiers are hitting Celeste has been taken out.
Okay.
So yeah, censorship isn't always something that we go from, we can't to, we're more understanding and accepting. That can be something else. And again, that's going to change a little bit of that characterization, how that story was told. Quality of life changes, balance changes, adding entire new content, dungeons, espers, Gilgamesh, the Dragon's Den.
Oh,
you've got...
I'm sorry, you just reminded me of something in the trailer. Did you see it?
Which bit? There's a lot going on.
The Greg bit in 7?
Yes.
I want to see that. Anyway, sorry.
Everywhere.
I think it's great that they're putting him in there because he's the dimensional traveler, and he was never in 7, was he?
He was not in any of the original stuff. In a lot of compilation stuff and other references, they started invoking more. So yeah, like Gilgamesh has become such a fan meme that he does make his way into everything at this point. Even like some of the changes that are introduced by platform differences, like that PlayStation 1 re-release, I didn't bother with because I was so used to the Super Nintendo one that the load times of the PlayStation drove me insane. Or older you've heard me rant before about Chrono Trigger and how emulated ones, the birds never sound right? I know I have ranted about this repeatedly. Older stuff, you have the old MIDI sound generation, where it would be interacting directly with the hardware, where it actually would sound different on different types of hardware, television speakers, other things, as opposed to modern stuff, where we have MP3s as a kind of universal format. But this also means that, for instance, those sounds are going to be different because they're now being generated in a different way by stuff that accesses the hardware differently. Some of these seem like trivial little changes, but I mean, like, you've heard me rant about the birds sound wrong.
He just wants to rant.
I mean, always.
Always.
Speaking a little bit of fan works, like, again, you've got the original creator, but these games are something that were enjoyed by a wide range of people. Arguably, it starts belonging to there's some amount of the experience that starts belonging to the audience. And so you start having, for instance, mods, which we've talked a little bit about on previous episodes.
Yep.
We have Phoenix Down Radio does not officially endorse the use of mods for any type of copyright or intellectual property violation.
Yep.
We're good on that, right?
Well, mainly
Cool.
it's we don't want people to utilize things that change games where
We don't want to get
impacts
sued.
other people.
Yeah, and we don't want to get sued.
And we don't want to get sued, but
again, if you have this thing where, okay, you've got these re-releases where the company is saying, hey, here's how we think it should have been done or how it could be improved. This is an opportunity for a lot of those fans, for a lot of the audience, for other artists to weigh in on that. You've got gameplay mods. If we're looking at Final Fantasy VI, one of the most notable examples, Brave New World, where you can have increasing challenge and removing exploits. You can make the game easier or more accessible. You could fix bugs. You could have something where even if the game's not necessarily made more or less challenging, you have more differentiation of characters. You can start getting into those ludonarrative elements where mechanics can be adjusted in a thing that when those mechanics communicate something about the character, changing up those things lets you change how the character is portrayed. Again, all of these things are done in official releases as well, but you're getting a chance to look at different opinions about how the game could be changed or improved. Mm-hmm. You've got those localization changes, which oftentimes you'll have, okay, people are inserting in-jokes or just doing but what about presenting the game in an entirely new language, making it accessible to a group that was never able to play it before?
Well, I mean, the big thing of it is when you look at the Japanese story versus the English stories of a lot of those early Final Fantasy games, there were so many differences between one version to the other that there was a lot of things that were just lost in the change, in the shuffle.
And it is a pure accident that poor Ted Woolsey was given not nearly enough time to do this really huge task and did the best with what he had, and in the process created the foundation for this entire thing at looking at how these stories can be presented differently to different audiences, how you can have locals. All of these questions, I don't know if they'd ever really been considered before we had this accidental thing where we got these variations coming up and the different fandom interpretations and things that built up around them.
Yep.
We talked a little bit about before, so I also wanted to mention Memoria Project. This is and it's been up for a good year and hasn't been taken down, so I think it's at least not rising to the level of ire that's going to get a legal takedown, it seems like. But it is described as a tribute. It's created by diehard fans of Final Fantasy IX. They wanted to show their love for the game, and they also want to present their imagining of what it could look like on modern hardware.
And I went ahead and linked it in the show notes, and we'll link it there as in the if you're listening on the podcast, so you can take a look at it. I strongly encourage you go take a look at what they did and some of the last videos that they created of it. Holy shit, does that look good?
Now, I did watch through the entirety of it, and then afterwards, I watched a video of a side-by-side comparison where they were looking at several different cutscenes, gameplay sequences, to compare what the original and what their reimagined version looked like. They make it very clear that this is not a playable version. There's no intent to release it. This would be more like the equivalent of a gameplay video to show, hey, here's what something like this could look like. Mm-hmm. But when you watch that side-by-side comparison, it's clear that it is not just a graphical update. You've got gameplay changes. Vivi can now climb and jump over boxes to reach areas that he couldn't before. You've got voice acting. You've got some tweaks to specific script elements that are going to make them more palatable to modern sensibilities. Even if it's something where the Rat Kid is telling Vivi, hey, you're going to be my lackey instead of my slave. Or where that sign maker just finishes his work rather than yelling at Vivi for tripping and calling him names. Stuff that, again, would turn off modern audiences. And a lot of this also allows for better characterization. We get a bit more of a feel of Vivi as this young, childlike person who's kind of bumbling along, especially those sequences at the top of the tower where he's having his little fear of heights and things like that. And when I watched that, if they had just updated the graphics and left everything else the same, would that have been as satisfying? Since this isn't even a playable product, is this something we should think of as fan art?
And I think that's where it ends up being. It becomes a one of those things where they're trying to pay homage to the original, and they've never wanted to make a playable game out of it. Just kind of showing
in part because they don't want to get sued.
Yep, but and also in part that they would like to show the powers that be at Square Enix that, hey, this is something people might be interested in. This is what could come of it. If you've got the time, hey, this could be cool. I know, I'd be happy for it. I love
presenting something with a lot of visual impact is a much clearer way to communicate that message. Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that, we kind of start getting into what feels like a fundamental question about all of these remakes, re-releases, remasters. Can that original experience be recaptured? I mean, on a certain level, obviously no. Fuck you, Heraclitus. He's the guy who said that you can't step into the same river twice because it's not the same river and you're not the same person.
Why does he gotta be just such a buzzkill, huh?
Goddamn Greek philosophers, fuck them.
Well, I mean, he's got a point.
So I mean, but yes, like on a direct level, no, that you can't recapture that original experience. But then this is the point where we're getting less into something where it feels like there's a clear answer and more when it becomes interpretation or personal belief, or because like you've got a remake, re-release, remake. What is your goal in doing this? You have chosen to remake this thing instead of making something new, and you've chosen to remake this instead of doing nothing.
Well, I mean,
so what is your goal here?
Well, here's the thing about that. All original stories have been told.
That is very, very debatable, and it depends.
But
you have to define a lot of your terms.
I know. If you think about it, a lot of things that are being told nowadays are adaptations, changes, or remakes of something that has already been presented in the past.
Sure. And it actually is interesting to compare this to something like a classic fairy tale, where this process may have been going on for centuries, or in some cases, millennia. You can change a lot about a story. You can lengthen it. You can add all sorts of things. You can turn it into a 2-length animated feature and still say, oh, hey, this is a variation on Cinderella.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it might be interesting. Okay, what is the base story of Final Fantasy VII? How much of it could you tweak and change and modify and still have someone look at it and say, like, okay, yeah, that's a variation on Final Fantasy VII? Or
I was just gonna say, the whole thing that where people were joking that all the Final Fantasies are basically just rip-offs of Star Wars.
But Star Wars is a ripoff of Arthurian legend, which is the original fanfic, I will have you know. The way Arthurian legend developed follows a lot of stuff of how fanfiction develops.
Yeah,
there is truly nothing new under the sun.
See, that's what I mean. If the story's been told.
But in that case, what is the goal? What is the point of doing this? I mean, obviously, in the case of something like this, they want to make a lot of money.
Well, I think the other big thing with it is they want to make sure that the people who are experiencing it can actually have a kind of a feel of it, that they can have a better understanding, that they can put themselves within it. If you retell a story that was told back in the 12th century, it's going to be hard for somebody in the 21st century to really understand what's going on.
Which is why you may update elements of it.
Exactly. So you change certain things. You turn it from being about a king and his court to, say, the president and his cabinet, or
or a mob boss and his flunkies.
Yeah, exactly. You change it a little bit. It's not the same story, but the feeling of it kind of.
Now, see, that's interesting here, because for something where it's on that long of a time frame, absolutely, I agree. But something like Final Fantasy Remake, it's a 20-year thing. It's enough time for the world to have changed a bit, but it's also enough time that people who grew up with it and remember it are still potentially part of your audience. Mm-hmm. So who is this remake for? Is it for those people who had the experience with the original? Is it for a new audience? I mean, again, yes, you want to make it's both of them. You want to make money,
Mhm.
but where's the balance between them?
'Cause-
Are you trying to show people what the historical experience was like? And so you create something as close as possible to that original experience. You having the same graphical quality, having the same weird glitches, having a thing that recreates this experience as much as you can.
But able
Is
to be
it
played
something
maybe on modern hardware, because the thing with technology is, as technology moves forward, the old stuff
Right.
is no longer accessible in many ways.
Right, and so you may be limited in how much you can create that historical experience.
Yeah,
So maybe you want to do something that creates a similar experience for a modern audience. You remember when Remake was first coming out, talking about how, okay, this looks different from this thing, but it's giving me the same kind of feelings that I had.
Yeah.
So something that, even though it's not the same, it's creating a similar kind of experience. Or should we maybe update it to fit a modern audience's taste? Go a bit more towards bringing those new people in. Tweak some of that stuff, again, like with the Final Fantasy IX, changing stuff where some of that language just felt awkward and weird, and it's going to be a turnoff to modern sensibilities. Even among original players, how many TV shows have you gone back and watched and been like, oh, I don't remember them being this racist?
Or movies,
This feels
even.
yeah, and it feels weird and awkward to watch. Even if you originally enjoyed it, the river has changed and you have changed too.
Yep. I mean,
And a lot of these don't have clear answers, but I think they're the questions that people need to be considering and hopefully are considering when they're making these remakes and figuring how they're going to go about it. Who is it for? What is it they want to accomplish with it? And I think a lot of the discourse hasn't always been as thoughtful about, like when people are discussing about it, they haven't necessarily been as thoughtful about, okay, what were the answers to this question? How were they trying to answer it?
so let's take that and let's think about what our thoughts were 4 years ago when Final Fantasy VII Remake was released in April of 2020. When you sat down and you put that in the PS4 and you played that, seeing that train sequence in the updated graphics, but it's a 1-for-1.
Right.
It felt very nostalgic right then.
It felt nostalgic, but nostalgia is different from the original experience. I'm not the same person. I know that I can never have that. What's going to happen? I know what's going to happen. I mean, they've made it clear that on a certain level I don't, but on some level I also do know some of the beats that are going to be hitting. Yeah. Part of the reason that the Nibelheim sequence was so impactful was even with the changes, there was these bits that I knew, they have to hit this point. This point is important. Oh, this bit is a reference to this thing.
The whole fire scene.
Oh God, it wasn't like they changed up how it was done, having Cloud limping through the thing, and yet you still have Sephiroth disappearing into the flames. Almost gave me chills.
Yeah, I mean that was one of those scenes, just like that the initial train scene, where you get a nostalgic feeling. You remember the way you felt back in 1997, 98, or whenever it was that you played the original. You got that little hit, but you're a different person. The story has different beats, but it still gives you the same, it feels familiar.
I remember how I felt. I don't feel the exact same way now. I do feel a different way, but I also do have memories to some degree of what it was like.
I think the biggest thing that they're trying to hit on with a lot of these remakes and the remasters is, for remasters, I think they're trying to hit some of the same notes that they did initially. With a remake, I think they're trying to bring up nostalgic pieces while letting you experience it in a slightly different way.
Yep. It's also interesting to think about the people who are working on these now probably also were part of that initial group of players. So they're bringing some of their own experiences to that. Like some of it can be their attempts to share what they experienced from that.
It's really, art is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, I will scream the live long day about how video games are art. They are this fascinating form of art, but this way where you're trying to convey these emotions, these ideas. And so having a thing where you're taking this story that we know and telling it a different way, it can be this really interesting way to take a shared experience and add some new thoughts and ideas to it. Even if it's just, this is how I saw it, this is how it made me feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't surprise me that we're seeing. I mean, it's interesting to see. I've certainly griped about how many things are remade for the boomers, but now they're starting to do it for me. And I mean, I guess I should object to some level, but okay, maybe the boomers aren't all terrible people, and this is understand. Oh God, I don't want to have empathy for the boomers right now.
Then don't. Just enjoy the things that you enjoy. You know, you don't have to be X, Y, or Z to enjoy things.
This is an important lesson that you all can learn from my troubling example. You can just enjoy things and not overthink them. But it is interesting to think about.
I think Rory took offense to your boomer comment.
If I say hashtag not all boomers, does that get me out of this? Am I about to get canceled?
No, I think Rory still loves you. So,
Aw, love you, Rory.
but here's the thing. Here's the thing with it all. This is our take on a lot of this. So with that, I want to make sure that everybody knows that, what we're saying is not gospel.
Oh yeah. Like, so even down to the thing of what counts as a remake versus a remaster. Mm-hmm. Those are, again, murky terms that get defined and redefined as people use them.
Yep. So what I want to propose right here.
I hope you'll all enjoy it, whatever your take on it is.
Exactly. But what I want to propose here to everybody listening to the show, whether it's live on YouTube or in the podcast form, what are your thoughts? We want to hear from you on this, because this is something that we're seeing a lot more in the video games industry and in entertainment in general. Is they're taking a lot of the things that worked in the past and they're revamping them, they're reworking them, and they're trying to make them for the modern sensibilities, or just trying to, maybe cash in on a quick buck. Who knows? But
I mean, they are companies. They still want to make money.
Yep.
They want to make money by offering something that we want, but they want to make money.
So we want to hear from you. Hit us up in Discord, on Twitter, via email, podcast@phoenixstarradio.com. Let us know what your thoughts are on the remake versus the remaster versus whatever. And what are your thoughts?
I would love to hear some of our listeners' thoughts on if they tried out that demo, how it hit them. Mm-hmm. Did they play the original? I am still fascinated by that person who played Crisis Core and had never played the original, and how different an experience they're having with the whole thing. Yeah. Like, they have such a unique perspective on how Tifa must have been feeling throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean,
that's fascinating to me.
As I was sitting and playing it, my girlfriend was sitting next to me, and I was kind of explaining kind of what was happening here, and that the fact that what he's telling was not how it happened exactly. He saw it through his eyes because he was there, yes, but he was not the person that he said he was.
Was Cloud the original unreliable narrator of the Final Fantasy series? I don't know that they had used that storytelling thing much before that. I think Cloud was really like the first really unreliable narrator, not even out of any attempt to deceive, like intent, but just because of all the shit that went down with him.
Yeah, there was just a lot of things that happened, and what came out of that was just a real, it fucked with his head. And that's the unfortunate side effect of being injected with Mako,
and Genova cells and a bunch of other stuff.
Oh yeah, that whole cocktail.
Hojo gonna Hojo.
But yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this little bit of discussion, because it's something that we haven't done in a while. We haven't gone and kind of really waxed philosophical on something like this in quite a while. So I wanted Seyrr to kind of stretch his librarian legs a little bit and have some fun with it.
I think once you saw just how far I had gone in the notes, you're like, okay, we're just gonna get out of Seyrr's way and let him pontificate for a bit.
Yeah, because it's something that I hope you guys enjoy, because I enjoy hearing him talk about it, because it's a different take on things.
I would also enjoy hearing, well, from our listeners about what they think about it. Do you think I'm full of chocobo dung? We'll go with
Yes,
chocobo dung.
you are. We know that.
Okay, but in regards to this particular thing.
All right, guys. Well, on that bombshell, that's going to go ahead and do it for this episode, guys. If you liked what you heard, please consider liking, subscribing, or following us out on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or whatever your preferred podcatcher is. And if possible, leave us a rating or review. It helps us know how we're doing and now lets other people find our show a little more easily. And if you really dig this show, consider subscribing here at twitch.tv/PhoenixDownRadio, where you're going to get access to a number of subscriber-only emotes and badges. Or you can support us out on Patreon, like our benevolent overlord Rory Fenrir, our secret of Nevermore Ravenheart, or our resident slacker Nick Nar by visiting patreon.com/PhoenixDownRadio. All proceeds go towards growing the show, cover things like hosting costs, allow us to improve and upgrade our equipment, as well as do some fun things like contests and giveaways. But just remember, guys, any kind of support, whether it's likes, tweets, retweets, follows, subs, donations, any of that, it's all greatly appreciated because we just love it talking with you guys. That's why we do it.
Please don't send us your kidneys. Technically, that would be support, so maybe not all forms of support. Please don't send your kidney.
Where did that come from?
I was reading an interesting thing about organ donation markets the other day, and it just popped into my head.
This is why we need to keep him thinking about more positive things so he doesn't go down those rabbit holes, people.
They're fascinating.
You're sick.
I'm not helping
Seyrr.
my case, am I?
You're a sick man, Seyrr. Anyway, we still love them. If you want to check out our backlog of podcasts, go out to our website, PhoenixDownRadio.com. There we have 195 other podcasts plus a few more and some articles you can read and take a peek at that. If you want to, expand on your thoughts of your thoughts on remakes, remasters, and things like that, you can email it to us, podcast@PhoenixDownRadio.com. You can also send us questions, comments, or just say hi. And probably the easiest way to get in touch with us is on our Discord server here. So if you go out to PhoenixDownRadio.com/Discord, that should bring you to a page that will allow you to join the Phoenix Down Radio server. We really appreciate seeing you there. We have a lot of good people who chat in there and just have a good time. So stop in.
Yeah.
Seyrr, you have any shout outs or anything you want to end the show with?
I'll go ahead and give shout outs to my friends Chris and Lauren, who I went shopping with earlier. We had a lot of fun. I am totally going to pick up some stuff for making my own pickles next time. I am so exhausted, and it was worth it. And it was great hanging out with them. I think at least one of them might be listening or was listening earlier because they asked about the show details. So,
well, I mean,
yeah, both of them play FF14 from time to time. So,
yeah,
shout out to the both of you. You're great. I had a great time with you today. I am going to spend way too much on fermentation materials, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. If you are listening, I hope you guys enjoy the show, and hope you guys maybe continue to listen, and maybe listen to some of the backlog.
Yeah. Nothing where I was being an idiot, though. That'd be kind of embarrassing. You don't need to know about that. You get enough of that as is.
Yeah. Anything else?
I'll
take that. Go ahead.
Shout out to Jasmine Tea. It's really tasty.
It is.
I got some nice loose leaf tea. I'm really looking forward to making it.
Nice. Yeah. I like going with loose leaf chais myself. Oh, they smell so good. I get chai from a vendor on Amazon, and they just do such an amazing job with it. All the fresh pods in there, and it's just so good.
I knew someone in college who would like mix her own spices. We always really loved it when she was in the mood to make chai for us. Nice. It was so great.
Excellent. And I want to shout out my girlfriend. We had a little bit of a pre-Valentine's dinner tonight. One night I cook, which was today, and she's going to be cooking for me on Monday. I decided to make a really amazing shrimp cocktail.
Ooh, shrimpies.
With super colossal shrimp. I mean, we're talking these shrimp they're 13 15s. So 13 to 15 per pound. So they were massive shrimp.
Shrimp.
Made a Wagyu beef steak.
Ooh.
Not the super expensive stuff, but the American Wagyu you can get. It's still nice and marbled and tastes really good with some sweet and spicy roasted carrots and perfectly done baked potato. It was so good. And we had creme brulee for dessert.
Ooh.
It was a nice one, and she's making me spaghetti and meatballs, homemade, everything from scratch on Monday. So I'm literally looking forward to that.
Nice.
It'll be amazing.
Shout out, like well-made homemade meatballs. Those are a goddamn treasure.
Yep, I will fill you guys in on the next episode in a month, so we'll let you know then.
Freeze some for me, please.
No, I will eat some for you and tell you how they were.
How generous of you. Truly, you overflow with the milk of human kindness.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you're ever in Minnesota and hang out, we'll make something for you. So you know that.
Drive time to Minnesota.
Long fucking time. It's about for you. It's probably about 33 hours.
Let's see. If I just say I want to go to Minnesota and don't tell it anything more, leave right now. Ooh, I can avoid some traffic.
You'll also encounter a lot of traffic.
30 hours. Also, my destination is in a different time zone, and there will be tolls.
Tolls?
Yes, the route that it wants to send me on has some tolls.
I suppose in the Bay Area. Because I don't know where are there tolls. Oh, if you go through maybe if you go through Denver.
Let's see, restricted usage road.
Anyway, well,
wow, this is.
We go in weird ways. Anyway,
oh no, it is in a section of the Bay Area. There's a toll.
Okay. Also, shout out to our puppy. He's been recovering from his surgery for the last 2 weeks, and he's doing much better. We wanted to give him a little bit of time before we brought him back on the show. Maybe in a month we'll have him on again. So
exploit your dog for internet clout.
Well,
that's how this works.
He does have an Instagram.
He does have an Instagram. It's adorable.
Yep. And if you're interested, ask me about it on Discord. I'll be more than happy to share it with you. But that's going to go ahead and do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. For my co-host, Seyrr Timono, I am Klauss and Seyrr, wishing everybody a wonderful evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care.
Phoenix Down Radio is a production of PhoenixDownRadio.com and Illusion Productions. Final Fantasy XIV and Eorzea are trademarks of Square Enix. In-game content for Phoenix Down Radio is the copyright of Square Enix. Opening music for Phoenix Down Radio is provided by Guilty Gear Rock You. Check out the Metal Chocobo theme cover and many other music videos at youtube.com/Guilty Gear Rock You. Closing music for this episode is provided by Guitar Wanker 90. Please check out their full version of Matoya's Cave and other rock video game covers at youtube.com/Guitar Wanker 90. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of Phoenix Down Radio and its hosts and do not reflect the views of Square Enix.